Don't say it, I beg her with my eyes. Don't say you know I'm in love with someone else. Please. Cassia, she tells me. And the love in her eyes for me is pure and true, and that's what makes her next words cut deep, because I know she has her best intentions at heart. I'm married to someone wonderful. I have 2 beautiful children, a job I love. It's a good life. She holds out the piece of blue stain. Do you know what would happen if I broke this glass? I nod. The cloth would disintegrate. It would be ruined. Yes, she says. And then it's almost as if she's speaking to herself. It would be ruined. Everything would be ruined. Then she puts her hand on my arm. Do you remember what I said the day they cut down the trees? Of course I do. About how it was a warning for you. Yes, she flushes. That wasn't true. I was so worried that I wasn't acting rationally. Of course, it wasn't a warning for me. It wasn't a warning for anyone. The trees simply needed to come down. I hear her voice, how badly she wanted to believe that what she was saying was true. How she almost does believe it. Wanting to hear more, but not wanting to push too hard to ask, what's so important about the report? What makes it different from other reports you've done? My mother sighs. She doesn't answer me directly. Instead, she says, I don't know how the workers at the medical center stand it when they're working on people or delivering babies. It's too hard to have other lives in your hands. My unspoken question hovers in there. What do you mean? She pauses. She seems to be deciding whether or not to answer me. I hold perfectly still until she speaks again. Absent-mindedly, she picks up her dress fragment and begins polishing the glass. Someone out in Grandia and then in another province reported that there is a strange crop popping up. The one in Grandia was in the atrium. It was an experimental field that had been followed for a long time. The other field was in the farmland in the second province. The government asked me and 2 others to travel to the field and submit a report about the crop. They wanted to know 2 things. Were the crop feasible for foodstuffs? And were the growers planning on rebellion? I draw in my breath. It's forbidden to grow food unless the government has specifically requested it. They control the food, they control us. Some people know how to grow the food, some know how to harvest it, some know how to process it, others know how to cook it. But none of us know how to do all of it. We could never survive on our own. The 3 of us agree that the crop were definitely useful for foodstuff. The grower at the atrium had an entire field of Queen Anne lace. My mother's face changed, suddenly light up. Oh, Cassia, it was so beautiful. I've only seen a spring here and there. That this was a whole field waving in the wind. Wild carrot, I say, remembering. Wild carrot, she agrees, her voice sad. The second grower of the crop I'd never seen before, of white flowers even more beautiful than the first. Seagull lilies, they called them. One of the others with me knew what they were. You could eat the bulb, both growers denied knowing you could use the plant for food. They both assessed that the intent was in flower. They insisted the plants were new to them and that they cultivated them as research for blossoms. Her voice, which had been soft and sad since she mentioned the field of Queen Anne lace. Growers stronger, the trees of us argued, The three of us argued the whole way back after the second trip. One expert was convinced that the growers were telling the truth. The other thought they were lying. They submitted conflicting reports. Everyone waited for mine. I asked for one last trip to be sure. After all, these growers will be relocated or reclassified based on our reports. My whole trip there balanced one way or the other. She stopped polishing the glass and looked down at the piece of blue cloth, as though there was something written there for her to see. And I realized that for her there is. The blue cloth represents the night she was matched to my father. She reads her life, the life she loves, in a square of blue satin. I knew all along, she whispered. I knew when I saw the fear in their eyes when we first arrived. They knew what they were doing, and something the Queen Anne lace growers said on my second visit convinced me even more of the truth. He acted as though he'd never seen the plant outside of the port screen before until he realized the crop. But he grew up in a town near mine, and I knew I'd seen the flower there growing wild. But I hesitated. And then when I came home again and saw all of you, I realized I had to report the truth. I had to fulfill my duty to the society and guarantee our happiness and keep us all safe. The last word, safe. It was as soft and hushed as it swished as the swash of silk. I understand, I tell her, and I do. And the hold she has over me is much greater than the officials because I love her and I admire her. Back in my room, I find the silver box where it fell inside one of my winter boots. I open it and take out the microcard, all of Xander's information, and the courtship guidelines. If there hadn't been a mistake, if it just had seen his face and everything would be normal, none of this would happen. I wouldn't have fallen in love with Kai, and the choice wouldn't have been so hard to make in the sort. Everything would have been fine. Everything can still be fine if this sort's what I expected. If Kai leaves for a better life, will I pick up the pieces of mine here? The biggest piece of my match with Xander would not be hard to shape a life around. I could love him. I do love him. And because I do, I have to tell him about Kai. I do not mind stealing from the society, but I will not steal from Xander any longer, even if it hurts. I have to tell him, because either way, whichever life I build, it has to be built on truth. Thinking of telling Xander almost hurts as much as thinking of losing Kai. I roll over and hold the tablet container tight in my palm, thinking of something else. I remember the first time I saw Kai on top of that little hill, leaning back, the sun in his face. I realized that is when I fell in love with him. I didn't lie to him after all. I didn't see him differently because I saw his face on the port screen the morning after my match. I saw him differently because I saw him outside, unguarded for a moment, with eyes the color of the sky in the evening before it goes down into dark. I saw him seeing me. Laying in bed, my body, my soul bruised and tired, I realized the officials were right. Once you want something, everything changes. Now I want everything, more and more and more. I want to pick my work position, marry who I choose, eat pie for breakfast, run down a real street instead of on the tracker, go fast when I want and slow when I want, decide which poem I want to read, and what words I want to write. There is so much that I want. I feel it's so much that I am water, a river I want, pool in the shape of a girl named Cassia. Most of all, I want Kai. We're running out of time, Kai says. I know. I've been counting the days too. Even if Kai's new work position is still here in the city, his summer leaver activity is almost over. I won't see Kai nearly as much. I allow myself to daydream for a few seconds. What if his new position is one that allows him more time? He could come all of the Saturday night activities. Only a couple of weeks of hiking left. That's not what I mean, he says, moving closer. Don't you feel it? Something's changing. Something's happening. Of course, I felt it. For me, everything is changing. His eyes are weary, as though he still feels watched. Something big, Cassia, he says, and then he whispers softly, I think the society is having trouble with their war on the borders. What makes you say that? I have a feeling, he says, from what you told me about your mother, from the storage of the officials during the free rect hours. And there is change coming at work, I can tell. He glanced at me and I ducked my head. Do you want to tell me why you were there? He asked gently. I swallow. I've been wondering when he would want to know. It was a real-life sort. I had to sort the workers into two groups. I see, he says, and he waited to see what I would say more. And I wish I could, but I can't get the words out. Instead, I say, you haven't given me any more of the story. What happened after the official came to get you? When did that happen? Now, it wasn't long ago because my voice trailed off.